Hey everybody, my name is Ryan Doyle, this is the Verdigris Table, and today we are building a Bard. We are trying as best we can to keep things as basic and user-friendly as possible by sticking to the SRD, the System Reference Document. That is linked down below, free, accessible, online. You don't need to spend a penny to start playing D&D. If you do enjoy this game after playing it a couple times and want way more options and cool art and all sorts of other stuff, the Player's Handbook is pretty much a necessity. I have a link down below for my affiliate link for the Player's Handbook. Otherwise, your friendly neighborhood game shop or a local independent bookseller may be able to hook you up with that. But yeah, we are building a Bard and going a little bit faster than we did in the Barbarian video. So if you're having trouble following along or you want a video that assumes you know absolutely nothing, then I try my best to explain and perhaps over-explain every little detail of the Barbarian as I build that. Here, I'm going to assume that maybe you know a little something or that you're willing to look it up. If you want a really good groundwork of like all of the details and rules of D&D, then I'm going to plug my D&D 101 playlist here. That's got everything. So if a question comes up, that's going to be a great resource to find the answer. But yeah, without further ado, let's build us a Bard. I've always considered Bards pretty unique among the classes. They derive their magical abilities, and they're magical, they're full casters. They derive their abilities not from, study or whatever, bloodlines, or a connection to a deity or nature. They play music, or they speak oration, maybe poetry, maybe song. That is the source of their power. That is how they do their magic, which sets them apart from every other caster. If you met the devil at the crossroads at midnight and sold your soul in order to gain power, then that would make you a warlock. If you beat that devil in a fiddle contest and maybe persuaded or deceived them in the process, then that would make you a bard. I was a little hard-pressed to come up with some good examples of bards in fiction. There's like some Sonic-based superheroes, I guess. Gurney Halleck almost fits the bill. I mean, I'm rereading Dune, so he's front of mind, but he kind of he plays music and he's a warrior, and they don't feel like the same thing. Scott Pilgrim, I think, is maybe the best example. Some of his abilities are coming out of his, musical prowess with the bass, whatever that may be. Bass Players Unite. The Pied Piper of Hamelin feels like, it's not a reach, that feels like on the nose, but the guy on the truck in Mad Max playing in front of the wall of sound, absolutely shredding and inspiring those maniacs. Yeah, he's definitely a bard. But I draw more inspiration from real life examples, from rock stars, from celebrities. I think that is the kind of bard archetype that we can lean into. My wife rolled up a bard named Django, which everybody loved and misses, and she leaned into that androgynous rock star vibe of a Prince or Bowie circa Ziggy Stardust, and it was pitch perfect. They, them pronouns, mass appeal without overdoing it and trying to seduce everything. Just classic bard. I leaned into that other Mimi kind of archetype and made up a dad bard for a different campaign. And my concept originally was this little league coach support caster, took magic initiate so I could get bless and guidance and really, bring everybody up all the time. And it kind of evolved into divorcee dad bard, midlife crisis, playing in the cover band in the tavern every night and sending alimony gold back home. And he just always rolled so poorly, and it felt just so right. And I miss Clint. There are many ways to play a bard. They're very powerful and versatile. You can be up in the front line. You can be a support caster. You could be a healer. Again, D&D doesn't quite, there's a lot of flexibility. You don't need to fulfill exactly one role without, the ability to do other stuff. But if you want the ability to do a lot of stuff, if you want to be a skill monkey, you want to be rolling for every, skill check, then Bard is a great fit for you. Also, if you want to be the party's face, if you want to be the chief negotiator, you want to try to convince the king maybe not to behead you or to, give you guys a job, then Bard's a super good fit. All right, so I've got an idea that I'm pretty excited about. So let's fire up the laptop here and let's go to the free editable PDF that Wizards of the Coast, the fine people who make D&D, provide. And we are going to make our character sheet. First things first, we're going to assign our ability scores. So I am taking the standard array to keep things quick and easy and user-friendly. And we are putting our best stat into Charisma. Charisma is going to be our spell casting modifier, our spell save DC. Some of the abilities I'm going to lean into are going to be charisma based. Charisma is the most important stat for a bard. So that is where I'm going to deposit my 15. And then I have a choice to make, but I'm going to take my 14 and I'm going to put it into dexterity. Dexterity has been called the god stat. That is the thing that whatever your character is, it's probably at least their second most important stat. That's going to give us probably our most used save. It's also going to give us initiative. It's going to affect our armor class. Dexterity is a big one. The other contender for second most important one is Constitution. So that's where I'm going to deposit that 13. And Constitution is going to determine my hit points. It's going to, Constitution saves, whatever, but like that's how much health I have. That's also my ability to concentrate on spells, which as levels increase is going to be an important thing for my bard. Now we get into like the second tier, and my concept for this character is that he's going to know at least a little about everything, and in some cases a lot. So I'm going to go intelligence with that 12. And then wisdom is going to be 10, which puts me like average perceptiveness. And then my dump stat, quote unquote, is going to be strength. The thing I am the least concerned about, I am below average in strength. The dude with the guitar often is, not always. But yeah, that is my array of scores. 8 in strength, 14 in dex, 13 in con, 12 in intelligence, 10 in wisdom, and then charisma, my big fella, is 15. So for race, this time I'm going to go with half-elf. One, mechanically, that is pretty much my best option as a bard. Let's put bard level 1 in here. But also thematically, half-elves occupy this space of being in between, a lot like the half-orc actually that we used for the barbarian, but instead of being like totally an outsider, half-elf vanilla canon is going to be an adaptable, charismatic kind of character who can code switch, right? Who can charm their way through societies that don't necessarily accept them fully, right? So to an elf, a half-elf is going to look very human, and to a human, they're going to look like an elf. So they're always kind of other. So there's different ways to adapt to that, right? But one way is this charisma-based kind of character. The other thing I'm getting out of half-elf is this kind of fey, elven quality of kind of breaking gender norms a little more androgynous. You don't have to play it that way, but it's there in the literature. And the character concept I have in mind is very masculine and a little dated, so it can be very quickly straying into misogyny, or at least, making people think of those tropes. So kind of softening the edges of that is going to be beneficial to me thematically. So what the hell does that mean? Well, I have this idea, and I forget where I picked it up exactly, but the bard in whatever historical context, in like medieval Europe, is actually going to be the main source of information, the main source of news, as well as whatever, entertainment. So if the king has died and his heir has taken over and like maybe passed some new laws, and I never leave my village, then the troubadour coming in from out of town is going to be the one to deliver that information, be it in a song or an epic poem or just, talking in the tavern after the performance. So that got my wheels turning, and I'm going to build this sort of like Walter Cronkite, like celebrity journalist newscaster, and take a little bit of that Mad Men era, Rat Packy kind of vibe, and there's some baggage attached to all of that, let's say. There's also plenty of baggage attached to newscaster, right? If I don't have to know anything about you to guess, if you're an American, that I say newscaster, then there's some channel out there that you despise is a strong word, but don't trust much of what they say. for sure. So I don't know. I don't really want to politicize the game too much, but kind of like reclaiming a whatever heroic truth teller. That could be fun these days in the age of information and fake news and all that. So yeah, going half elf with its outsider status and kind of its gender bendy vibes can sand down the edges a little bit of the historical baggage I am tapping into by using a late 50s, early 60s kind of archetype with sexism, racism, take your pick of that era. It also gives me +2 to charisma and +1 to 2 other abilities, which is pretty great. Whatever, politics and humanitarianism aside, making my charisma a 17 feels real good. And that puts me into +3 territory. And I'm going to put my other ones into dexterity and constitution, because again, those are in competition for my second most important stat, as it is for most characters. And now let's fill out the modifiers, and I like my modifiers to be big because that's what we're going to be using most of the time at the table. The fact that I have a 14 in constitution is frequently going to be less important, and I need less easily accessible than the fact that I have a +2 in Constitution or +1 in Intelligence, rounding out Wisdom with 0. And there we go. I'm going to put in my proficiency bonus here, which is a +2, and that's just coming from my level. And yeah, that is going to do it for ability scores. And let's see what else this half-elf race, is giving me. So my speed is going to be 30 feet, pretty standard, 30 feet speed. And from my elven heritage, I am getting dark vision, which again is almost pretty standard for most races in 5th edition, but always a very good thing to have. I'm also getting Fey ancestry, which is pretty sweet. I'm going to get advantage on saving throws against anything that is charm, basically, and I can't be put to sleep by magical means. Another really awesome thing is skill versatility. I get 2 skills, any skills, and I'm actually going to put that in my back pocket. I'm going to hold on to that for a minute, and we're going to look at languages. So I get Common and Elvish, and I get another 1. So oftentimes I will ask the DM, hey, is there something that is, better for my character to know how to speak? Are we going to be dealing with a lot of dragons or giants or orcs or elementals? And obviously all of those are going to have different languages associated with them. And, your DM might not want to tell you anything about the campaign coming up, but it can actually be super useful for both you as a player, obviously, and the DM to have you speak a language that's going to come up in play, because that can really create a lot of opportunities for the dungeon master to, give you information, to give you plot hooks, to give you clues that might not otherwise be there. So I would ask the DM, but let's say in honor of Fizzbands, I'm going to take Draconic. That's always a good one. All right, so I like to skip around a little bit at this point and grab my background before I fill out all my class stuff. So I was considering charlatan. I had this idea of like a Great Gatsby type self-made, working class individual who has, through whatever deception and personal growth, kind of built themselves up, this self-made man archetype who passes for, someone a little more high class, maybe, insinuating themselves into the high court or whatever the case may be in my fantasy campaign. But one, pick a decade, right? And 2, it felt like that would definitely bring in that like political element to the table. And it's one thing to talk about it with you here. It's another to like interject that into our fantasy game, right? A charlatan newscaster, the jokes write themselves. So I'm going to lean into just like classic bardness, even though maybe mechanically it's not as useful, some would argue, but I'm going to go with entertainer. So let us record that on our character sheet, entertainer. Very simple, because again, I'm not appearing on the Fantasy News Network. I'm in the tavern singing songs and delivering epic poems about whatever historical things, even if it's recent history, my bard is going around making a living by barding it up. So first we get those skills. We're going to get acrobatics and performance, which, you know, makes a lot of sense for an entertainer. I am, whatever, delivering my epic poetry while playing my instrument, and I'm acrobatic, which is always good gameplay wise. And I don't know, maybe I'm doing the splits like James Brown or something. So acrobatics and performance are going to benefit from my proficiency bonus now. And remember, I still have a couple skills in my pocket from Half Elf. I also gain proficiency with the disguise kit, which could be super useful if I'm creative in play, and thematically, I guess, you know, stage makeup, performing different roles. But yeah, a disguise kit could be a handy thing to be good at. We're also, maybe obviously, getting proficiency in an instrument, and I'm going to take lute. Pretty basic, but that feels right. I am picturing this like Leonard Cohen now, right? Kind of finger picking while I deliver my oration. All right, under equipment, it's giving me an instrument, but it's not giving me that disguise kit, which I'm going to interpret to mean I've got to go buy one. So that's the first thing on my shopping list, because that'll be super useful. So yeah, taking my loot. I'm also getting kind of like a flavorful trinket, and I'm taking the lock of hair, because that feels very on brand for my crooner here, lock of hair. And I have a costume, makes sense. And you know, that's going to be my stage getup. And I'm seeing that classic, let's call it a trilby, so I don't have to say the other kind of hat and whatever. Three-piece suit, maybe like a trench coat. And what else? 15 gold. Pretty solid. That's a good start. Now, the background feature, backed by popular demand, you know, maybe it's not going to be all of that useful in the dungeon, but it could be pretty cool when we get to town, at least fun, right? Now, for this one, I'm going to leave out personality traits, ideals, bonds, flaws. I like to do that later in the game. As my, you know, initial story with Clint demonstrated, I often walk in with a concept of what I want the character to be, and that can evolve, and I like leaning into that flexibility, because what the other players at the table are bringing, and you know, what the DM is doing, the world that they're crafting, and it's their world, we're just playing in it, that can have a big impact on how I see my character, what I want my character to be. So if you absolutely need that foundation at the table, so you don't have to improv as much, or so you know your motivation when you are improving, right? If you want that better sense of who your character is, or you have a crystal clear idea, then yeah, go for it. This is just my personal quirk, but I like walking in with that flexibility, because there's going to be a little more sense of discovery at the table of who this character really is. All right, so that's going to cover the background stuff. I already have a pretty good sense, flexibility aside, of who this bard is going to be, but let's get down to the nitty gritty and switch back over to our class features. So for hit die, we're getting a D8, not amazing, but not terrible. So that means our hit point maximum is going to be 8, plus our Constitution modifier this first time. We're getting the full value of the die. We're adding our Constitution modifier. So at level 1, we have a measly 10 hit points. Pretty scary. Let's not take too many arrows or swords to the face. For our proficiencies, we are getting light armor. So again, not amazing, but certain subclass options or feat can like bulk that up if we decide we want to be in the mix a little bit more. Light armor. And then for weapons, we've got simple. And then we have some like exceptional ones: hand, crossbow, longsword, doop. Rapiers, which, okay, with my dex bonus, I'll probably go rapier and short sword. And then for sword. For tools, we get an additional 3 instruments. And now, if I were making a character who was, you know, based maybe on a more specific inspiration, maybe like culturally or something, I would go leaning into, you know, more inspired choices. I mean, I don't know. I'm going for more of like an era and like a very modern era. So whatever, I will fill that in at a later point, and just almost at random, I'm gonna take a drum, I'm gonna take a flute, I guess tambourine, maybe, if the DM lets me, is a little, I'm getting a little more folky than croonery. I don't know. Do I want to play fantasy saxophone? I don't know if that's my vibe. But we'll see. I'll let you decide what instruments you want to play when you take this character. For saving throws now, we are getting dexterity, which is the big one, and charisma, which plays to my strengths. I might not be rolling too many charisma saving throws, but when I do, I'm going to want to make them for sure. So my dexterity is going to be +4 in this case, and my charisma is 5. Sorry, that font is tiny. I'm going to stop using this, I think. It's going to be different when I save it, and the link to this is going to be up there. I should mention that on the top. When you download this, if you want it, it's going to look a little bit better than what you see right here. I promise. Let's fill in the rest of my saves while I'm doing this. Strength is a 0, con is a 2, intelligence is a 1, and wisdom is a 0. And that does it for saves. Now let's talk about the good stuff. Let's talk about skills. I can choose any 3 skills from my class, and I'm still holding on to those 2 any skills from my race. So right now I get to pick out 5 skills. Now, again, I like this idea of being the guy who knows a little bit about everything. So I'm going to take, that's why I put my 12 in intelligence. I'm going to take some of these intelligence skills. I want to know about arcana and history and, I don't know, let's say religion, right? And okay, if there's a wizard or a cleric in the party who's going to excel at these things, then like maybe I'll leave them alone a little bit. And then let's take, I'm going to take perception. That's always a good one to have. And I'm going to take investigation. I'm going to lean into that journalist kind of vibe. Again, that's an intelligence derived spell. And, you know, I'm so interested in that, I kind of forgot about my bardiness. So let's drop perception, even though it pains me. And again, this is all experimentation a little bit. You can tinker until you start playing. And I absolutely want to take persuasion. Absolutely. That's going to be the gift of the gab is the bard's mainstay. I want to be able to influence people with my words. And in fact, I'm also going to drop religion and let the cleric or the wizard or somebody else handle the religion aspect of that. I'm going to keep with history and arcana, and I am going to take deception. Politics aside, being able to convince people what I'm saying is true, even when it's not, is going to be a great skill for me to have in gameplay. Again, if I wanted my character to be completely truthful based, then yes, I would not take deception. Yeah, okay, all right, you convinced me. I'm going to drop deception. We'll take religion. Fine, guys. And we are going to fill out this column now. So acrobatics is getting proficiency and my dex, so that's a big 4. Animal handling is a 0. Arcana is a 3. Athletics is a -1. Deception, still 3, even without proficiency, right? I don't practice lying, but when I do lie, I am good at it. History is a 3. Insight is a 0. Intimidation is a 3. Even with bad strength, I can still convince somebody that they'd rather not mess with me, or, you know, I'm +3 better at that. Investigation is going to be a 4. My medicine will be 0. My nature would be 1. Perception is 0, which I'll live to regret. Performance is a 5. Persuasion is a 5. That makes me happy. And religion, 1. Sleight of hand, 2. Stealth, 2. And survival, 0. So there are my skills. I always like to double check to make sure that I put my proficiency bonus. I use the right ability modifier, which I will totally fact check. I hope I didn't screw that up. But yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 skills. And even the ones that I'm like, Not good at, I'm still okay at. So yeah, a skillful character. All right, so equipment, we're gonna take the rapier, like I said, because that is versatile. It is a dex-based thing, so I get to use my proficiency bonus and my dex on my to hit. So that is a, whoops, that is a +4 to hit, and I'll put damage in a second. I'm also going to take the Diplomat's pack or the Entertainer's pack. As much as the Entertainer's pack as an entertainer feels right, and honestly is probably a little more useful, the Diplomat's pack has ink and paper and soap and perfume, and that is a little more in line thematically with my idea of this character. So I'm going to go Diplomat's pack, and I already have a lute, so I can take another instrument. I'm going to take I'll take the flute. I'll take the pan flute. Why not? I like pan flutes, and that has a little fey flavor, so maybe, you know, my elven heritage is expressed through my pan flute, but lute is my mainstay. And I'm going to get leather armor. So, leather armor. Oh no, let's put it here. Leather armor, and I'll fill out the pack, but leather armor is what I'm equipped with, and dagger. Actually, no, let's put the dagger up in my weapons. And again, I might not use that dagger as a weapon too often, but maybe occasionally I'm going to do an offhand attack. So it's good to have that listed here as well. All right, so I filled out my equipment there. I'm not going to make you watch me type poorly for a minute or two, and we are going to fill out our armor class. So a set of leather armor is going to give us 11 as a base AC plus our dexterity modifier. So our AC is 13. And oops, I always skip initiative. Initiative is going to be just our dex modifier so far. That's a +2. All right, now let's get to the good stuff. Bards are spellcasters. So my charisma, we're going to go all the way down here to page 3. And my charisma is my spell casting ability. So I have +3 in charisma. My spell save DC, right? For some spells, you're going to make a saving throw on the DM side, the enemy side. That is going to be 8 plus my proficiency plus my spell casting ability. So it's 8 plus my proficiency, which is 2 right now at level 1. And then the 3 coming from my charisma. So that is a 13 for my spell save DC, and my spell attack again is my proficiency bonus and my charisma modifier, so that is a +5 to hit with spells. So at level 1 I have 2 level 1 spell slots, and I know 2 cantrips and 4 other spells, 4 level 1 spells. Now the spells I select are really going to define this character, how they operate at the table. I have a whole video on spell selection, but the main takeaway of that is choose what's best for you. Choose what is the most fun. Choose what makes sense for your character. You don't have to do what I am doing here. But yeah, for this guy, it made sense to me to make Minor Illusion my first cantrip. One, it is super useful, super versatile. There is a lot you can do with Minor Illusion without spending a spell slot. It's also thematically, it makes sense for my bard to be able to, you know, conjure up the image of the king that he's talking about, or the monster he's telling a tall tale about, or the ability to, you know, conjure up a laugh track, or the sound of a standing ovation could be very useful for a performer in a tavern. There's also plenty of ways to use it in social play and in combat, or at least like the lead up to combat. You want to make a pile of treasure 30 feet away. That's probably an enticing trap or distraction for a lot of creatures, and a lot of creatures are going to have a pretty low intelligence save too. For my second cantrip, we only get 2. I was torn between taking Message and taking Vicious Mockery, and either way, I'm going to say this just in when I cast it, at least for the first couple sessions. Lead into my character here, but I'm going to take Vicious Mockery. Now, light crossbow, even a short bow is going to do more damage, but imposing disadvantage can be super useful. And I like the idea of making a different kind of character this time out, making a more support type who's doing different things, leaning less into damage and more into utility for the party as a whole. Also, Vicious Mockery is just a classic bard spell, and it would be good to have along for my character for like hecklers, right? Just like the dry, cutting wit makes sense for this like rat packy Dean Martin kind of character. And like, yeah, in play, is it going to turn into more, Jerry Lewis than Dean Martin? Maybe. I'm the kind of nerd who's going to like have a list of insults on the back of my character sheet ready to go for when I cast Vicious Mockery. All right, so for first level spells, if I wanted to lean into that like comedic aspect of the entertainer, then Tasha's Hideous Laughter is a great spell. And again, I would have a whole list of, dumb dad bard jokes to deliver at the table, written on the back of my character sheet if I took that one along. I don't want to lean too far into the comedy side of things for this character, so I'm going to go with Sleep. I can see him playing his lute and like singing a lullaby or whatever, and Sleep is a super powerful spell, especially at low levels. Eventually I might swap this out for something else, but at level 1, the ability to take out, 2 or 3 goblins or kobolds or whatever can instantly shift the tide of combat. I'm going to take Charm Person for my second spell. It's just a great fit for the class and the character. As long as we're not actively trying to kill each other at the moment, if the target fails their wisdom saving throw, then we are best buds for an hour. So if I want to convince the night watchman to let us through the gate after hours, or I want the orc to tell us where the secret stronghold is, maybe how to get around the patrols, maybe there's a back way in. Charm Person is the spell for me. Now keep in mind, after an hour the spell wears off, so we might want to be way far away an hour later, and the target is going to know that they were charmed, and they're probably going to tell their friends. So there's repercussions to using this poorly for sure, but the ability to instantly be best buddies with someone for an hour can be just a great tool to have. So to keep this character versatile and to lean into that like Swiss Army knife kind of role, I was going to take Healing Word here, but I've recently grown very interested in the spell Heroism. It gives the target, right, be it you or the party's tank, 3 temporary hit points every round. Now, those don't stack. It's not 3 and then 6 and then 9. It's replenishing that buffer of 3 hit points, but that's basically damage mitigation. And if it is used to its full capacity, twice, then on average it's already done more healing, quote unquote, than Healing Word would have done. And it's interesting to like set it and forget it, that healing over time. There's not a ton of spells in D&D like that. It does take concentration, but I'm not using my concentration for much else at level 1 right now. And again, I might find in play that I don't like this as much as being just like being able to turn on the healing when I need it, because if a character's at 0, temporary hit points does not bring them back. But I'm going to do a little experiment here, and I'm going to take Heroism, because again, I'm trying to build a character that is a little different. I've only got 1 spell left to know, and there's a bunch of great options there. Thunderwave, Dissonant Whispers are really calling out to me, but I have a lot of combat ability here, and I want to be able to take advantage of the fact that my bard is a ritual caster. I can cast ritual spells if I have an extra 10 minutes without using up a spell slot. I only have 2 first level spell slots, so having something that I can do without burning those could be very useful. So I was eyeing Identify, but Identify in its material components lists a pearl worth 100 gold, so I need that. I can't just use my Arcane Focus, my instrument, to replace that. I can't just buy a component pouch. I need 100 gold, and I need someone to sell me a pearl worth that 100 gold. So for now, at least, I'm going to take Comprehend Languages, and it feels right for this character. 1, as like an investigative journalist, but 2, as like this, and poet kind of character. The idea that I can open up a book of poetry written in Giant or Sylvan or Draconic or whatever language, that makes sense. I could, cover songs. I could translate poetry from a bunch of different cultures and eras. And, you know, in play, it might be super useful to be able to read the big bad evil guy's plans if it's written in a language that nobody at the table speaks. So it can be useful. It's pretty situational here, but it suits the character, and I'm going to take it. The last class feature we're getting at level 1 is Bardic Inspiration. And even if we only took offensive spells and built out our character to really be a blaster, a damage dealer, having Bardic Inspiration is going to put us in that support column at least as well. As a bonus action, as long as the target is within 60 feet of us and can hear our rousing words or our little ditty, then we can get to hand the player a d6, which they can add to any ability check, any attack roll, any saving throw for the next 10 minutes. That's huge. And they can decide whether or not to use that d6 on any given roll after they've rolled the d20. So they can see the result, and before the DM has told them, you know, up or down, success or fail, they can decide whether or not this is the moment to roll that d6 and add it. Now, super useful. In a lot of cases, we only get 3 per long rest. We only get an amount equal to our charisma modifier. So for us, 3 a day, essentially, per long rest. So we want to make these count. Now, again, that duration, that 10 minutes, and the fact that the player gets to determine when they're going to use them after they see the d20 result makes them very powerful and very useful, but yeah, pick your spots. I'm going to put my Bardic Inspiration under attacks and spellcasting because they won't always get used in combat, right? If the rogue is doing a sneaky sneak, or I don't know, the wizard is trying to, you know, add a spell to their spellbook. There's a million ways to use these things, and they're not all going to be in combat, but I want it front of mind in combat for sure. All right, so that's a pretty solid, versatile level 1 bard. If you are inspired to make one of your own, you know, go for it. If you would like to use this one, then I'm including a link down below, 1 to the editable PDF if you want to make your own, but 2 to this very character sheet on my website if you wanted to play this character. And if you do, 1, feel free to tinker if your party needs more heals or more damage, or you want to change up the skills or whatever, you know, change things up with my blessing. And if you do use this character in play, I would love to hear about it down below in the comments, or I'll include my socials down here if you want to reach out to me on a different platform, privately or publicly. Yeah, I would love to hear about that. Up next, we're going to take this character and make them level 2. And some really cool stuff's going to come online, and then level 3 and beyond. And there's some really great things on the horizon for our bard here. Until then, get out there, have fun. Thank you so much for watching. Be kind, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.